So I want to now talk about the My Lai Massacre itself, because it's something that we've sort of been talking about quite a bit throughout this video, but that I think is worth a sort of deep dive. So when we talk about the My Lai Massacre, what actually happened was that around at least 347 and up to 504 civilians were killed. And they were killed in the hamlet of My Lai and also the hamlet of a place called My Lai. These two are often grouped together due to their geographical proximity and due to the temporal proximity of those massacres. They roughly co-occurred. No Vietnamese males of fighting age were found in this massacre. Everyone killed was were unarmed women, children, babies, and elderly men. The people committing the massacre also stopped in the middle to take a lunch break before resuming the murderer. Some women were gang raped, some women were raped. Raped girls were as young as 10 years old. There were, I think, about 6, let me just double check. There were 9 rapes under 18 years old. The sexual assaults included gang rapes and sexual torture, although it's worth noting that rape is such an excruciatingly painful process that it is a form of physical torture anyway. According to an eyewitness, a woman was raped after her children were killed by US soldiers. Another Vietnamese villager also noticed soldiers rape a 13-year-old girl. Individuals within this company, so the soldiers involved in the My Lai Massacre moved around the village, systematically rounding up women and children, rounding them up into pits and killing them. So just to give I'm just going to describe some of the actions of individual officers. So Ernest Medina was the sort of captain of Charlie Company. So Charlie Company was the army unit committing the massacre. I should specify that, actually. So the My Lai Massacre was committed by soldiers from Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 20th Infantry Regiment, 11th Brigade of the 23rd Division. And it was organised as part of this task force called Task Force Barker. The individual who organised it was this guy called Captain Ernest Medina. He was not charged for it, despite relaying to the soldiers that he had orders to kill everyone in that village, including so-called civilians. I'm just trying to find some testimonies of individuals who were in this. So Harry Stanley was a grenadier who came to refuse an order from Lieutenant Calley. So Lieutenant William Calley was this individual who was under command of about 100 soldiers who personally went around killing children and who ordered other soldiers to also fire on women and children. So Harry Stanley was given an order to kill civilians that were rounded up in a bomb crater. Sergeant J. Vidmer said, he was quoted as saying, "The most disturbing thing I saw was one boy," and this was something that, this is what haunts me from the whole ordeal down there. There was a boy with his arms shot up half hanging on, and he just had this bewildered look on his face and like, what did I do? What's wrong? He was just, it's hard to describe, couldn't comprehend. I shot the boy, killed him, and I'd like to think of it more or less as a mercy killing because somebody else would have killed him in the end, but it wasn't right. Robert E. Maples was a machine gunner who said that he refused an order to kill civilians hiding in a ditch and claimed that his commanding officer threatened to shoot him. Just going to list some testimonies from other soldiers now. William Doherty and Michael Terry, soldiers from the 3rd Platoon who participated in the killing of the wounded in a ditch. Bernardo Simpson, a rifleman who admitted that he slew around 10 people in My Lai on CPT Medina, so Captain Ernest Medina's orders not to kill only people, but even cats and dogs. He fired at a group of people where he allegedly saw a man with a weapon, but instead killed a woman with a baby. Sergeant Kenneth Hodges, who was a squad leader, was charged with rape and murder during the My Lai Massacre. In every interview given, he strictly claimed that he was following orders. None of these individuals were prosecuted. There was in fact one person who was prosecuted, William Calley, a lieutenant who led around 100 men and personally ordered many of them to kill people. He rounded up unarmed women and children into a ditch and fired on them. He then noticed a 2-year-old boy climbing out of a ditch on one occasion, grabbed him by the arm, tossed him back in the ditch, and shot him. Calley did not express any remorse at the trial. He said, "I carried out the orders that I was given, and I do not feel wrong in doing so." There was, in fact, a massive level of societal support for Calley. So he was originally sentenced to life in prison. That sentence was commuted to 3.5 years of house arrest. So a Gallup poll finds that 79% of Americans disapproved of Calley's convictions. A subsequent poll revealed that 81% of Americans wanted President Richard Nixon to commute his sentence. There was, in fact, a really big outcry in popular culture seeking to excuse William Calley. So, for example, many conservatives rallied around Calley as being unfairly prosecuted by an oversensitive military. In fact, one man in Boston was quoted by a reporter by saying, "What do they give soldiers bullets for? To put in their pockets?" There was a lot of popular culture support of William Calley. So there was this very popular song called, the Battle Hymn of William Calley, which it was the Battle Hymn of Lieutenant Calley. It was this song which offered a heroic description of William Calley, and the lyrics basically describe him as this sort of persecuted, forgotten soldier who was resentful of anti-war protesters and who was sort of set up as a scapegoat for the top brass, even though he did in fact order people to kill women and children. The song itself actually reached a peak position on 37 on the US Billboard Hot 100. While it is absolutely true that other individuals should have been prosecuted for the My Lai Massacre, and the fact that William Calley was the only one prosecuted was a massive injustice, it's still an objective fact that he was guilty of doing of committing war crimes. He wasn't, sorry, I'm just trying to set up this camera. He wasn't unfairly prosecuted. He wasn't this sort of unfair victim. He did in fact commit war crimes and admitted to them and did not express remorse for them. Some other outbursts of popular support for him. So radio stations and record stores were filled at the time with verses praising Calley's actions. There was this #1 hit by this guy called Barry Sadler called The Ballad of the Green Berets, which sort of supported William Calley and backed him up. There were over 60 pieces of My Lai-inspired music recorded between 1970 and 1973. Most of them were very pro-Calley. In fact, a lot of country music actually, and a lot of conservative individuals compared William Calley to Jesus Christ. So Texas rockabilly Big Bill Johnson wrote a song called Set Lieutenant Calley Free, and he sung, "We're a 6'6" society who's nailed Calley to a tree." So another song called Set Calley Free by Free Blue also compared Calley to Jesus Christ, complaining that the lieutenant was nailed to a cross. A rock group called the Senators even depicted in the art for their single War's Cross, they depicted William Calley hauling a cross to Calvary. There was a reverend called Michael Lord from Columbus, Georgia, which was William Calley's hometown. He was speaking at a rally for Calley in 1971, who said, "There was a crucifixion 2,000 years ago of a man named Jesus Christ. I don't think we need another crucifixion of a man named Rusty Calley." A reminder, he tossed a 2-year-old into a ditch and shot him. Again, other things. Billy Starr, this Kentucky country musician, mourned that men like Calley make the world a better place for everyone to live. When he says everyone, presumably he doesn't mean the hundreds of Vietnamese people killed. There was an Oklahoma singer called Lucky Clark who praised Calley's actions in the commie-invested village, the town they called My Lai, and who also sung, "If we can't stand by our fighting men, what is this country coming to?" Merritt Jordan wrote a song called Pardon This Soldier, who wrote, "Set him free, he was doing his job for you and me." In fact, William Calley received thousands of letters of fan mail, so much fan mail that when he was being housed in barracks, he actually had to be moved rooms because there was just so much fan mail going around. When he moved around the army barracks, he was treated with heroism by other army members who repeatedly bought him beers, according to eyewitness accounts at the time. Also, the last 10 days of his sentence before parole, the army refused to incarcerate him, which I mentioned that already. So Richard Nixon actually received thousands of telegrams to the White House, which were about 100 to 1 in favor of Calley and in favor of overturning that conviction. So Calley got about 3.5 years of house arrest. Incidentally, after Calley was prosecuted, 2 Marines said, "Well, we massacred people in World War II, so we should be guilty as well." So these 2 Marines turned themselves in for massacring unarmed women and children. In World War II, nothing happened. They were essentially just turned away. The person who stopped the massacre was a warrant officer named Hugh Thompson, and he did so eventually by landing his helicopter between US soldiers from Charlie Company and Vietnamese civilians being murdered. He also told his soldiers to shoot at US soldiers if they continued firing on US civilians. As a result, he was ostracized for this. Warrant officers in his mess refused to sit with him. There were dead dogs placed outside his door, and he received multiple death threats. And lots of people actually, so there was an individual, I forget their name, I think it was a senator in Georgia, who actually asked Nixon to jail Hugh Thompson for telling his men to fire on US soldiers. Lots of politicians, by the way, also rallied to William Calley's cause. So, for example, Jimmy Carter, who is a known humanitarian, at the time he was the governor of Georgia, and he instituted an American Fighting Men's Day, or was it American Fighting Men's Week? Yeah, it was American Fighting Men's Week, and he asked Georgians to drive around for a week with their cars, with the lights on in their cars, in protest for the unfair treatment of Calley. State legislatures across the country also issued resolutions in support of Calley. In the media, magazines like Esquire ran covers featuring Calley smiling gleefully amidst a group of uncomfortable looking, admittedly, Vietnamese children. So if you look at Esquire, the confessions of Lieutenant Calley, you see him standing, grinning, depicted in warm colours in the middle of this magazine cover surrounded by Vietnamese kids. So as a result, by the way, just as a thing to mention, in 2019, Donald Trump also pardoned war criminals from the Iraq War, presumably as a result of the same impulses of excusing people who followed orders and not wanting to undermine morale in the army. The rationale, by the way, of just following orders was repeatedly invoked by people who supported William Calley. So this is actually known as the Nuremberg defense because it was invoked by Nazis in the Nuremberg trials. They consistently said that they were just following orders. The US Army did not accept this as valid at the time. However, during the Vietnam War, the US Army did accept this as valid, as evidenced by the complete lack of prosecutions for war crimes. And also American society, a huge swathe of American society, evidently felt the same way, as evidenced by the fact that 79% of Americans polled disagreed with Calley's conviction.